The ceremonial hammer, cold and heavy, felt like a judgment in Liam's hand. Its polished obsidian surface mirrored the flickering candlelight, a distorted reflection of his own haggard face. The blood wasn't his, not yet, but the screams he knew with a sickening certainty would be his forever. They would echo in the cavern of his mind long after the night faded, a testament to the choices he was about to make. In the adjoining room, beyond the thin, sound-absorbing panel, his daughter, Maya, breathed softly, innocently, utterly unaware of the abyss opening beneath her father's feet. For now, she slept soundly. For now, there was still a choice. He remembered a different kind of quiet, a quiet that wasn't peaceful but terrifying. The quiet of a hospital room, sterile and stark, where every breath was measured, every beat of a monitor a fragile hope. Maya, then 5, her small body racked by an illness that stole her breath, her energy, her very childhood. Her skin had been translucent, stretched over a framework of frail bones. Her eyes, once vibrant pools of curiosity, dull and shadowed. He remembered the precise, horrifying shade of blue her lips would turn when a seizure stole the air from her lungs. The desperate, silent count of the seconds until the paramedics arrived, again. He remembered the doctors' somber faces, their hushed explanations of a rare, progressive neurological disorder, the gentle suggestions of hospice care. He remembered Anya, his wife, her face a mask of exhaustion and despair, her hand clutching his so tightly it hurt, silently pleading for a miracle they both knew wouldn't come. They had tried everything, every specialist, every experimental drug. Each failed attempt was another nail in the coffin of their hope, another inch given to the encroaching darkness. And then a whisper, an article buried deep in a desperate forum, a cryptic reference to a place called Ethelgard. A chance, an impossible, desperate chance. Ethelgard Wellness Commune. The name itself promised salvation, a balm for the broken. Tucked away deep in the dense, fog-shrouded forests of coastal Oregon, it was a fortress against the outside world. The autumn of 2024 had cloaked the landscape in a relentless, chilling rain, the decaying foliage mirroring the gnawing dread that had become Liam's constant companion. But inside the commune, a hyper-modernist sanctuary of glass and clean lines, a different atmosphere prevailed. It was a place designed to soothe, yet its transparent walls, offering sweeping views of the perpetually damp woods, created an unsettling sense of being constantly watched, constantly exposed. The first circle of renewal meeting had been disorienting. A large, circular room, bathed in a soft, indirect light that seemed to emanate from the very walls. Dozens of parents sat on plush cushions arranged in concentric rings, their faces etched with a familiar weariness, but also a newfound serenity. Their children, Maya among them, played quietly in the center, a picture of health that had brought a knot of emotion to Liam's throat. Maya, vibrant and laughing, her hair catching the light as she chased another child, her cheeks flushed with the rosy glow of health, not fever. It was a sight he had thought he would never see again. The raw, guttural hope that surged through him was almost painful. Elias, the commune's leader, stood at the heart of the circle, an almost mythical figure. His presence was immediately commanding, his voice a low, melodic baritone that resonated with an unshakable conviction. He spoke of collective belief, of the circle's energy, of shared intent as the true medicine, a vital sacrament. He spoke of unburdening the past, of purification rituals that would align them with the natural rhythms of wellness. His eyes, a startling shade of pale blue, seemed to bore into each parent, promising understanding, offering an escape from the relentless tyranny of despair. Liam, always a skeptic, had found himself drawn into the collective trance, desperate for this new reality to be true, clinging to every word. Anya, ever more susceptible to hope, already had tears streaming down her face, a fragile smile blooming through them. They spoke of Maya's renewal, using the commune's jargon with a strange reverence, as if the words themselves held healing power. Life at Ethelgard settled into a surreal rhythm. Days were filled with group meditations, communal meals, and unburdening sessions where parents shared their anxieties and doubts, often leading to a collective reassurance, a reaffirmation of the circle's strength. Maya continued to thrive. Her color returned, her energy boundless, her seizures a distant, terrifying memory. Liam found himself relaxing, just a fraction. He started to believe. He needed to believe. Then came the storm. It arrived not with thunder and lightning, but with the quiet, devastating pronouncement Elias delivered during one of their evening gatherings. The air in the circular room, usually so thick with a comfortable, if unsettling, warmth, grew frigid. Elias stood, his face grave, his voice tinged with a solemn regret that belied an undercurrent of steel. "Beloved circle," he began, his gaze sweeping over the assembled parents, "it is with a heavy heart that I must share unwelcome news." A collective intake of breath rippled through the room. Liam's own heart hammered against his ribs. He instinctively reached for Anya's hand, his gaze darting to Maya, who, oblivious, was sketching intently in her notebook on the central rug. Elias continued, "Our dear Noah, son of Sarah, has regressed. His condition, which had shown such profound promise, has unfortunately returned with renewed vigor." A gasp broke the silence. Sarah, a quiet woman Liam had exchanged polite nods with, sat frozen on her cushion, her face draining of all color. Her husband, Mark, a burly man who usually exuded a gentle strength, stared at Elias, his jaw slack. Elias paused, allowing the news to sink in before delivering the cruel punchline. "This, regrettably, is a clear indication of impurities in his family's faith, a lack of true spiritual alignment with the circle's intent, a deviation from the path of purity we all strive for." The words hung in the air, a chilling accusation. The warmth in the room evaporated instantly. Liam felt a collective shift, a palpable turning away from Sarah and Mark. The faces that moments before had been full of empathy now hardened, closed off. Sarah's eyes, wide with disbelief and pain, searched the room, pleading for understanding, for kindness. She found none. Liam, horrified, watched as she was made a pariah before his very eyes. Her family's tragedy transmuted into a moral failing, a contagion to be avoided. The serene, unsettling atmosphere of Ethelgard had curdled into something truly sinister. He felt Anya's hand tighten in his, a tremor running through her. Her gaze was fixed on Maya, a silent terror gripping her. Over the next few days, the ostracization of Sarah's family was total and brutal. They were ignored at communal meals, their children were shunned in play, their very presence treated as an infectious disease. Elias orchestrated it all with chilling precision, subtly reinforcing the narrative of their failure as a threat to the collective purity of the circle. Liam felt a growing unease, a cold tendril of doubt coiling in his gut. But whenever he voiced even a mild concern to Anya, her response was swift and sharp. "Don't, Liam, please. Look at Maya. Don't risk it." Her fear, he realized, was a potent weapon Elias wielded with masterful skill. A week after Noah's regression, Liam found himself called to a private session with Elias. The leader sat behind a polished wooden desk, a single flickering candle his only source of light in the otherwise dim room. The shadows danced around his face, making his pale eyes seem even more piercing. "Liam," Elias began, his voice soft, almost conspiratorial, "I sense a disturbance in your personal energy, a residual attachment to the old world, perhaps." He leaned forward, fixing Liam with an intense gaze. "To fully embrace the circle's renewal, we must unburden ourselves of the weight of the past, shed the skins that no longer serve us." Liam's heart hammered. He knew what was coming. The whispers of the unburdening rituals were common. He'd seen others emerge from these sessions looking both relieved and strangely hollow. I don't understand," Liam stammered, though he did. Elias smiled, a gentle, understanding curve of his lips that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Purity, Liam, is not merely about physical health. It is about spiritual alignment. To ensure Maya's continued wellness, your family must be in complete harmony with the circle, and right now, there is a discordant note within you." He gestured towards a small, ornate brazier on the corner of the desk, glowing with embers. "I ask you to bring something, Liam, something that represents a part of your old life you cling to, a belief, an identity, a possession. And here, in the heart of the circle, you will offer it to the flame. A symbolic sacrifice, an act of unburdening." Liam's mind reeled. He thought of his old camera, a beaten-up Nikon he'd carried through countless adventures before Maya's illness had consumed his world. It represented a life of freedom, of passion, of a self he barely recognized anymore. It was a fragment of a past that felt impossibly distant, yet still held a phantom ache. The next day, he brought it. With a trembling hand, he placed the heavy, familiar metal into the brazier. The plastic melted first, then the lens warped, the delicate mechanics groaning under the heat. The smell of burning plastic and metal filled the room, a sickening odor that mingled with the sweet incense Elias had lit. Liam watched the camera buckle and blacken, a piece of himself turning to ash, a silent scream caught in his throat. Elias watched him, an unreadable expression on his face, a slight, knowing nod when the camera was utterly consumed. "The path to renewal," Elias murmured, "is often paved with necessary farewells." Liam felt a chill deeper than the Oregon rain. Later that week, unable to shake the image of Sarah's raw grief, Liam sought her out. He found her by the communal laundry room, huddled against the damp, cold wall, her shoulders shaking silently. "Sarah?" he ventured, his voice barely a whisper. She started, her head snapping up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, haunted. "Liam, you shouldn't be speaking to me." Her voice was hoarse, thick with unshed tears. "They'll see. Elias will know." "I don't care," he said, surprising himself with the sudden surge of defiance. "What happened to Noah? It's not right. It's not fair." Sarah scoffed, a bitter, broken sound. "Fair? This place isn't about fair, Liam. It's about control. And the children, they're the leverage." She pulled him further into the shadow of the laundry room's overhang, her voice dropping to a desperate whisper. "Noah didn't regress because of our faith. He never got better. Not really. It was always a gamble, a fleeting improvement here and there. But Elias, he needs the victories. He needs the healthy children as proof of his power. And the failures?" She met his gaze, her eyes burning with a desperate urgency. The failures always happen to those who question him, those who doubt, those who start to see through the smoke and mirrors. Liam felt a cold dread spread through him, a certainty blooming in his gut. Her words were a chilling echo of his own unspoken fears. He remembered Elias's unblinking stare, the carefully constructed facade of compassion. Sarah's warning, delivered with such raw desperation, solidified the cracks in his carefully constructed belief. He tried to reconcile it with Maya's miraculous recovery, the undeniable vitality that had returned to his daughter. But Maya, she's genuinely better. She is. Sarah's face twisted in a grimace of pain. They cycle through the desperate, Liam. They prey on our hope. He isolates us, makes us dependent on the circle, on him. And if you step out of line, if you threaten his authority, your child is sacrificed. Your child fails so others can be reminded of the cost of disobedience. She wiped a tear from her cheek. Please, Liam, be careful, for Maya's sake. Her words clung to him like the damp Oregon fog, seeping into his thoughts, corrupting the fragile peace he had built. He couldn't shake the image of Noah, a boy he'd seen laughing just weeks ago, now exiled, condemned. The seed of doubt, once planted, began to sprout into a thorny, insidious vine. He needed answers. He needed proof. Late that night, while Anya slept fitfully beside him, Liam crept out of their minimalist room. The commune was silent, bathed in the pale glow of the moon, filtering through the persistent mist. He made his way to Elias's private office, a place normally locked and guarded. Tonight, however, the large glass door stood ajar, a sliver of light escaping from within. Elias, he knew, was conducting a late-night spiritual alignment session with a new family, a common occurrence. The calculated oversight gnawed at him, but his desperation overrode his caution. He slipped inside. The office was sparse, almost austere, yet exuded an undeniable aura of power. A large, reclaimed wood desk dominated the center of the room. He moved quickly, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He rummaged through drawers, his fingers fumbling over neatly organized files. And then he found it. A hidden compartment beneath a false bottom in the deepest drawer, containing a stack of medical records. Not the sanitized, optimistic reports presented to the parents, but raw, unfiltered data. Patient charts, test results, progression notes. He found Noah's file first. His breath caught in his throat. The regression wasn't a sudden event. The notes, scrawled in a detached medical hand, showed a consistent pattern. Noah's condition had never truly improved beyond a placebo effect. There were fluctuations, brief periods of stability, but no sustained remission. Elias's public pronouncements of healing were a carefully constructed lie. Liam flipped through more files, a cold dread washing over him. The pattern repeated. Other children who had failed, whose families had been quietly removed or violently ostracized, showed the same consistent trajectory. No real improvement, only the desperate hope of parents, manipulated and exploited. A sudden click behind him. Liam froze. The light from the hallway spilled into the office, silhouetting a figure in the doorway. Anya. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and accusation. "Liam, what are you doing?" Her voice was a terrified whisper. He spun around, clutching the files to his chest like a shield. "Anya, you have to see this. Elias, he's a fraud. It's all a lie. The medicine, the renewal, it's a scam." He thrust Noah's file into her hands. "Look, Noah never got better. None of the failures did. He just tells people what they want to hear until they start asking questions, and then he makes an example of them." Anya stared at the documents, her hands trembling. Her gaze flickered from the medical jargon to Liam's desperate face, then back to the damning evidence. A deep tremor ran through her, but it wasn't the tremor of dawning understanding. It was a tremor of pure, unadulterated fear. "No," she whispered, her voice cracking. "No, Liam, you can't. You can't say that. It's not true." Her eyes full of a raw, primal terror fixed on his. "You don't understand. You didn't see her before. You didn't see what I saw when she seized, the way her little body crumpled." She squeezed her eyes shut, reliving the nightmare. "We tried everything, everything. This is the only thing that worked. Look at Maya now, Liam. Look at her. She's alive. She's happy." She dropped the file as if it were burning her, her hands flying to cover her mouth, muffling a choked sob. "You can't risk it. We can't. If you break the circle, if you question Elias, she'll get sick again. I know it. I feel it." Her voice rose, hysterical now. "I would do anything, Liam, anything, to never see her like that again. Don't you understand? Anything!" The raw, desperate plea in her eyes was a revelation, carving a chasm between them that felt impossibly wide. Her fear wasn't just for Maya's health. It was for her own sanity, for the return of a past too traumatic to contemplate. The unspoken accusation hung heavy in the air. His doubts were a threat to their daughter, to their carefully constructed new life. Anya's terror, her absolute refusal to see the truth, plunged Liam into a profound despair. He was alone in his dawning horror. He tried to argue, to rationalize, but her fear had erected an impenetrable wall. She simply shook her head, tears streaming down her face, muttering, "No, Liam, just no." She fled the office, leaving him standing amidst the damning files, a cold dread settling in his bones. He knew, with a terrible certainty, that Elias would already know of his transgression. The open door, Anya's terrified response, it had all been a test, a trap. He was right. The next morning, a knock on their door. Elias stood there, immaculate even in the persistent drizzle, his pale eyes unblinking. He didn't enter, simply motioned for Liam to follow him. They walked in silence, the only sound the rhythmic crunch of their boots on the gravel path and the drumming of rain against the commune's glass walls. He led Liam to a secluded gazebo, overlooking a turbulent, mist-shrouded river. Elias turned, his face calm, almost serene. "Liam," he said, his voice softer than usual, "I understand your distress. The nature of true renewal can be disorienting. It challenges everything we think we know." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the churning water below. "But sometimes a necessary disruption occurs. A shadow falls upon the circle, threatening its delicate balance." He turned back to Liam, his expression hardening. Sarah's family. Their continued presence, their resistance to true faith, has created a significant disturbance. It has begun to poison the very energy of the circle. Liam swallowed, his mouth suddenly dry. He knew what was coming. Maya, Liam, is exceptionally sensitive to these shifts in energy. You've seen how quickly she blossomed with the circle's strength, but she is equally vulnerable to its decline. Elias stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, intimate tone, laced with a chilling authority. The impurities, the doubt, the questions that Sarah and her family embody, they are affecting Maya. I can feel it. Her wellness is at risk. Liam felt a fresh wave of ice wash over him. Gaslighting. He saw it clearly now, the insidious manipulation. But the fear, The image of Maya's blue lips still held him captive. There is only one way to restore balance, Liam, to cleanse the circle, to reaffirm your loyalty, your unwavering faith, and thus secure Maya's place within the light of our collective intent. Elias's gaze was unwavering, his words a venomous caress. Sarah and Mark's family must be entirely removed, not just from the commune, Liam, but from ever threatening the circle again. A final, absolute cleansing, a purification ritual to exile the disease entirely. Liam's blood ran cold. The implication was brutal, unmistakable. He could feel the weight of the ceremonial hammer, not yet in his hands, but a phantom presence, already an extension of his will. Elias placed a hand on Liam's shoulder, his grip surprisingly strong. This is not violence, Liam. This is an act of profound love, the ultimate sacrifice of a father protecting his child, a testament to your devotion, to Maya's life. He looked Liam dead in the eye. Prove your commitment, Liam, for your daughter, for her life. Perform the cleansing. Today, the command hung in the air, cold and absolute. Liam felt a sickening lurch in his stomach. He was being asked to cross a line, to commit an unspeakable act, all for the promise of his daughter's life. Anya, terrified beyond reason, had already urged him to take any path to keep Maya safe. Elias had known this. He had planned this. Liam stood on the precipice, caught between two impossible choices: condemn his soul or condemn his child. The rain continued to fall, washing over him, but doing nothing to cleanse the growing dread within. The hammer waited. The screams waited. He stumbled back to their room, the weight of Elias's words pressing down on him, suffocating him. Anya was awake, huddled under the blankets, her eyes puffy from crying. She looked up as he entered, her face a stark landscape of fear. "Liam," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What did he say? Is Maya still safe?" He sank onto the edge of the bed, the cold metal of the hammer a phantom presence in his mind. He wants me to perform a cleansing, a final one, on Sarah's family." The words felt foul on his tongue, alien and monstrous. Anya flinched, her eyes widening further. She knew what that meant. The whispers had been growing louder in the commune. Elias's euphemisms had begun to wear thin, revealing the chilling truth beneath. But then, a subtle shift in her expression. The terror, instead of deepening, seemed to sharpen, focusing itself into a desperate, almost feral resolve. "Then you have to do it," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "You have to, Liam, for Maya. You heard him. He said she's vulnerable. She's too sensitive to the impurities. If we don't, she'll get sick again. Don't you remember? Don't you remember the hospital? The way she fought for every breath?" Her hands clenched, knuckles white. "I can't go back there, Liam. I won't. I don't care what he asks. I need her to be well." Her plea was a knife to his gut, twisting the last remnants of his will. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not just a loving mother, but a woman pushed to the very brink of her sanity, willing to sacrifice anything, everything, to keep the horror of their past at bay. He saw his own desperation reflected back at him, amplified and distorted. He hated himself for seeing it, for understanding it. Liam nodded slowly, the motion a betrayal of his own conscience. "I understand," he rasped, the lie burning his throat. He understood her fear. He understood his own. But he would not commit murder. Not for Elias, not even for Maya. Yet, he had to play the part. He had to make Elias believe. He had to buy time. He gathered the tools, the ones Elias had left for him in a small, weathered canvas bag outside their door. The ceremonial hammer, its obsidian head polished to a malevolent sheen, felt heavier now, charged with a terrible purpose. There was also a coil of coarse hemp rope and a vial of what Elias had called purification salts, a crystalline powder that glittered ominously in the dim light. Liam's fingers traced the rough fibers of the rope, picturing Sarah's children, picturing Maya. A cold sweat slicked his palms. He wasn't going to use these tools for their intended purpose. He would use them as a diversion, as a shield, as a weapon. The plan formed in his mind, desperate and reckless, a frantic scramble for survival. He would go to Sarah's, yes, but not to harm her, to warn her, to save them all, to expose Elias. But the thought was a fragile thing, easily crushed by the enormous weight of risk. If he failed, if Elias discovered his true intent, Maya would be condemned, or worse. The memory of Maya's blue lips, the image of her small body convulsing, flashed behind his eyes, a tormenting loop. He knew this was the moment of truth. The choice, though silent, would define him forever. He left before dawn, under the cover of a thick, impenetrable fog that rolled in from the coast, swallowing the commune in its gray embrace. The relentless rain had subsided, leaving the air heavy and cold. The paths were slick with decaying leaves and mud, the silence broken only by the drip of water from the ancient firs and the frantic rhythm of his own heartbeat. Each step he took away from the commune, towards Sarah's isolated cottage nestled deeper in the woods, felt like a step further into an unknown abyss. He carried the canvas bag, its contents a chilling burden. When he reached Sarah's cottage, the windows were dark, only a faint glow emanating from within, casting long, distorted shadows onto the wet ground. He knocked, a soft, urgent rap. Silence. He knocked again, harder this time. Anya's words echoed in his head, a painful accusation. If you break the circle, if you question Elias, she'll get sick again. I know it. I feel it. Her terror had been absolute, a primal scream from the deepest part of her soul. Had she already broken? Had her fear for Maya pushed her to betray him? He pushed the thought away. He had to believe she hadn't. He had to try. Finally, the door creaked open a sliver. Sarah peered out, her face gaunt, her eyes weary and suspicious. When she saw Liam, her eyes widened in alarm. "Liam, what are you doing here? They'll see you. You shouldn't be here." Her voice was laced with a desperate fear, but also a hint of defiance. "They're not here yet," Liam whispered, pushing the door open wider and stepping inside. The small cottage was cold and damp, smelling of wood smoke and stale fear. Mark sat at a small table, his head in his hands, two small children, Noah and his younger sister, clutching at his legs, their faces pale and drawn. "Elias sent me. He wants me to perform the cleansing." He watched Sarah's face drain of blood, then quickly added, "But I'm not going to. I'm here to help you escape. Elias is a fraud. It's all a lie. I saw the records. Noah never got better, Sarah. None of them did. He's just manipulating us, preying on our desperation." Sarah stared at him, her eyes searching his, trying to decipher if this was another cruel trick. Mark lifted his head, his face etched with a mix of disbelief and dawning, furious understanding. "The records?" he growled, standing up, his large frame suddenly radiating menace. "Yes, Liam affirmed, his voice low and urgent. It's all a sham. He makes examples of anyone who doubts him. And now, he wants to make an example of you, permanently. He gestured to the bag he carried. These aren't for cleansing, therefore, to make it look real. But we have to move, now, before he gets here. A flicker of hope ignited in Sarah's eyes, quickly overshadowed by a fresh wave of terror. But where would we go? We have no money, no car. He cut us off from everything. He made us dependent on him. We'll figure it out, Liam insisted, his voice hardening with resolve. We have to try, for our children. We'll go to the coast, find a town, any town, just away from here. Mark, however, was shaking his head. It's too late. He knows. He always knows. He looked towards the window, a terrible realization dawning on his face. How did you get in here so easily, Liam? Was the door unlocked? Before Liam could answer, a sudden, blinding flash of headlights cut through the fog outside, followed by the crunch of tires on the gravel path, the distinct hum of the commune's electric buggies. Elias. A cold dread clenched Liam's stomach. He hadn't been tipped off by fear, but by calculated intelligence. Anya. She had told him. Her fear for Maya had eclipsed everything. He had been a fool, trusting that even in her terror, she would not betray him. Elias. And with him, two of his inner circle, large, silent men with impassive faces Liam knew only as guardians. They emerged from the vehicle, their silhouettes ominous in the swirling fog, moving with a predatory calm towards the cottage. "Get down," Liam hissed, pushing the children towards the far wall, away from the windows. "Sarah, Mark, we have to fight." He snatched the ceremonial hammer from the bag, its obsidian head feeling less like a burden, more like an extension of his desperate will. The rope, meant for binding, now became a potential snare. The purification salts, a blinding irritant. The door burst open, crashing against the wall. Elias stood framed in the doorway, his pale eyes burning with a cold fury. Behind him, the two guardians, their faces grim, moved to flank him. Liam. Elias's voice was soft, laced with a chilling disappointment. Such a shame. I truly believed you were ready for renewal, to accept the vital sacrament. He cast a glance at Sarah and Mark, then at the terrified children. But it seems your impurities ran deeper than I thought. You sought to corrupt the circle further, to betray its sacred trust. He smiled, a thin, humorless slash across his face. Thankfully, Anya understands the true meaning of devotion. She understands the necessary sacrifices required for Maya's continued wellness. Liam's heart plummeted. Anya. He had been right. Her fear had been stronger than their bond. Stronger than his life, perhaps. "You're a monster, Elias!" Sarah screamed, grabbing a heavy iron poker from beside the cold fireplace. Mark, his face contorted with rage, picked up a sturdy wooden chair. "A monster?" Elias chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. "No, my dear, I am a healer. I merely prune the diseased branches to ensure the tree of life continues to flourish." He nodded to his guardians. "Cleanse them, all of them, and bring Liam back. He needs a more personalized form of unburdening." The guardians moved, swift and brutal. The small cottage erupted into a chaotic, terrifying struggle. Mark roared, swinging the chair, connecting with one guardian's shoulder with a sickening thud. The man grunted, momentarily stunned. Sarah lashed out with the poker, a desperate, wild swing.
Liam, fueled by a searing mixture of rage and terror, met the second guardian head-on. He swung the ceremonial hammer not with ritualistic intent, but with the raw, desperate force of a man fighting for his family, for his very soul. The obsidian head connected with the guardian's arm, a sickening crack echoing in the small room. The man cried out, dropping to his knees.
But Elias had anticipated this. He was prepared. He had seen Liam's defiance in his eyes. He had known, perhaps, that Liam would not simply comply. A third figure emerged from the fog, a smaller, quicker guardian, circling to flank Liam. This was no mere persuasion. This was an execution. Liam saw Sarah go down, overwhelmed by the first guardian, the poker clattering to the floor. Mark was wrestling furiously with the second, but he was losing. There was no time, no escape through the front. He looked towards the back window, small and high. Not ideal, but their only chance. "The window!" Liam yelled. "Go! Take the children! Run!" He pointed towards the back of the cottage. Mark, seeing the desperation in Liam's eyes, understood. He grabbed Noah and his sister, pushing them towards the window, scrambling to get it open. Sarah, bruised and battered, struggled to her feet, moving with frantic urgency to help. Liam laid into the guardians, swinging the hammer, a desperate whirlwind of blows. He felt a sharp impact on his side, a grunt of pain escaping him. But he kept fighting, buying precious seconds. The purification salts went flying into one guardian's face, blinding him momentarily with a guttural scream. The chaos was deafening, a desperate symphony of grunts, shouts, and splintering wood. As Mark pushed the children through the window, a small, choked gasp tore through the din. Liam's blood ran cold. He turned, his heart seizing in his chest. Maya! Anya had been holding her. She must have followed Elias, a terrible, desperate witness to the scene. She stood frozen in the doorway, Maya clutched in her arms, her face a mask of horror. But it wasn't Anya's face that truly froze him. It was Maya's. Her small body, once so vibrant, was rigid. Her eyes rolled back in her head. Her lips, once rosy with health, were already turning that familiar, terrifying shade of blue. A seizure. Right here, right now. The direct consequence. The immediate, brutal payment for his choice. Anya screamed, a sound of pure, unadulterated agony as Maya's limbs began to convulse, a frantic, uncontrollable dance of suffering. The noise cut through the chaotic fight like a blade, silencing even the guardians for a split second. Elias stepped forward, his face a terrifying mix of triumph and cold satisfaction. "You see, Liam," he hissed, his voice a chilling whisper. "You have broken the circle, and now your daughter pays the price for your defiance. You have condemned her." The words struck Liam harder than any blow. He had gambled, he had lost. Maya was sick again. His choice, his fight for his soul, had been her sentence. A wave of gut-wrenching despair threatened to drown him. But then, a flicker of something else. Not despair, but a raw, animalistic fury. If this was the consequence, then he would face it, but not on Elias's terms. He would not let Maya be a sacrifice to this monster. He surged forward, ignoring his own pain, ignoring the guardians. His target was Elias, a wild, desperate swing of the hammer. Elias, quick as a viper, dodged it, but Liam's momentum carried him forward, past the cult leader, past Anya and Maya. He snatched Maya from Anya's trembling arms, a desperate instinct taking over. She was limp, unresponsive, her breathing ragged. "Run, Anya, run!" he bellowed, pushing her towards the back window where Mark and Sarah were still trying to get the last child through. Anya, stunned, disoriented, finally moved, scrambling out into the swirling fog. Liam, carrying his seizing daughter, turned back, facing the guardians. One was still clutching his arm, the other wiping the purification salts from his eyes. The third was moving fast. Liam knew he couldn't fight them all, not with Maya in his arms, but he could delay them. He grabbed a heavy wooden stool, throwing it with all his might, then another, creating a momentary barrier. "Liam!" Sarah's voice, a desperate plea from outside. "Come on!" He launched himself towards the open window, scrambling through the narrow frame, Maya's small body heavy and fragile in his grasp. He landed awkwardly on the wet ground, the impact jolting his already seizing daughter. A fresh wave of self-loathing washed over him. He had fought, he had won a battle, but the war for Maya's health, he had just lost. They ran, blindly, through the dense fog-shrouded forest. The rain returned, a cold, relentless downpour, mirroring the deluge of tears that streamed down Liam's face. Maya's small body convulsed rhythmically in his arms, each spasm a testament to his terrible choice. Sarah and Mark, their children clinging to them, pushed through the undergrowth, their faces grim, their eyes fixed on some unseen escape. Anya stumbled behind them, her face pale, her hair plastered to her skull, her sobs lost in the hammering rain. They didn't know where they were going, only that it had to be away. Away from Elias, away from the commune, away from the false promise of a cure that had cost them everything. Hours later, perhaps days, the line between them blurred by exhaustion and terror. They found themselves in a sterile, anonymous motel room, miles from Ethelgard. The kind of place with institutional carpet and faded, generic art on the walls. Liam sat on the edge of one of the two queen beds, Maya cradled in his arms. Her fever was high, her breath shallow. The seizures hadn't stopped. They were less violent now, but more frequent, wearing her down. Her lips were no longer blue, but a sickly gray. He held her tight, a silent vow passing between them. He would never let her go again. He would fight this, truly fight this, with doctors, with medicine, with everything he had left. But the memory of her laughter, her vibrant energy at Ethelgard, felt like a ghost, a taunting echo of a future he had gambled away. Anya sat on the other bed, her back to him, her shoulders slumped. She hadn't spoken since their escape. Her silence was a deeper wound than any accusation. She was broken, shattered. The fragile hope she had clung to so desperately, the hope that had led her to betray him, had proven to be a cruel mirage. She had traded one nightmare for another, and the cost was their daughter's health and, perhaps, their marriage. Sarah and Mark had taken the children to the adjoining room, the muffled sounds of their exhausted voices a faint murmur through the thin wall. They were safe for now, free but hunted. He had saved them, but at what price? Liam looked down at Maya, her small chest rising and falling with agonizing effort. He was free of Elias, free of the cult, free of the gaslighting and the creeping dread. But he was not free of the illness. He was not free of his impossible choice. He was not free of the agonizing weight of his daughter's suffering, which now lay solely and unequivocally on his shoulders. He had fought for his soul, and in doing so, he had condemned his child to the very fate he had desperately tried to escape. They were alone, truly alone, and the future, shrouded in the persistent, cold fog of uncertainty, offered no easy answers, only the haunting echoes of what had been and what would never be again.